Hi, the LG G6 is now 6 years old, which feels strange for me to think about since it feels like yesterday when I had to shell out $700 to get it. And my wallet still feels bad all those years later. But I don't regret it. The LG G6 was such a great phone with so many great features that we now take for granted, like the ultra wide camera, or being one of the first of these so-called bezel-less phones that weren't actually bezel-less, but you get the point. But it's not 2017 anymore. And after all these years using it as my main and now as my secondary phone, I will share with you the experience I've had with the G6 6 years on, the good things, the bad things, and some of the quirks I found along the way. Back in 2021, I covered the G6 in great detail, and back then I said the G6 was worth it for the right price. But now the phone has aged so much, and all I can say is it's not worth it anymore. A little after I made that video, I ran into a weird bug that broke some apps. After installing some update from the Play Store, that app would no longer work. So at first I thought it was an issue with all the LG G6, but after asking some people, I realized it was just me the one affected by this issue. Some of the apps I had issues with were Amazon Shopping, Google Keep, Gmail, Roblox, and even the Google Assistant, which this one was actually the first one other than a Pixel to have this feature, which I found kind of sad that it didn't work anymore. But now, knowing that I was the only one with this bug, what I did was to flash another ROM and see if that fixed it. And yes, it did. Gmail and the Google Assistant worked just fine after that. This ROM I installed was Android 9. I wanted to give it a second chance, but I immediately noticed a dip in performance. So now that I had my phone reset, I went back to Android 7. But that wasn't going to be as easy as I thought. I ran into so many problems, ranging from the flashing tool not working to bad drivers, and finally, after many hours, I unbricked my LG G6. So if you want me to do a tutorial on how to do all of this, let me know in the comments. Well, now that I was on Android 7, I could really feel the power now. A huge performance boost even compared to Android 8. I didn't imagine the difference would be that big, so if you have an LG G6 on Android 7, do not update it to Android 8 or 9, unless you really have to. And there are things that will happen regardless of what phone you have, things such as apps becoming more demanding with every new update, and therefore more slowdowns, or the battery that after 6 years of continuous use is no longer as good as it used to. The vibration motor works only when it feels like it, and not to mention the fingerprint sensor that doesn't work anymore. I also found new bugs that only happen like when the planets align, like what happens to the always on display. But hey, let's be fair, I've used this phone daily for 6 years, and the fact it still works is a huge milestone in durability. Along the way, I found some tips to cope, ranging from simple things like disabling apps or services that run in the background to save battery, to more advanced things like lowering the resolution to 1080p using ADB commands, which helps to get a small boost in performance and increase battery life a little bit. The problem is, it has some bugs like incomplete screenshots, so for reasons like this, I went back to 1440p. Despite the years, the G6 still has a really good screen. With an 18 by 9 aspect ratio, 1440p resolution, and 564 ppi, it still looks great. The colors, the contrast levels are very good, and for an IPS, the blacks look very dark. However, on super sunny days, I did miss a little more brightness, and the 600 and so nits that it reaches sometimes fall short. The biggest downsides today are that it's not 120Hz, but the truth is I don't care. Also, image retention could be an issue to some people, but I don't mind since it happens so rarely. The LG G6 features both a wide-angle camera and a standard camera, a configuration that was exclusive to LG in 2017, and it wasn't until 2019 that other brands began to follow LG's lead and adopted this camera setup. In good to mid-lighting conditions, both cameras on this phone still capture nice looking photos. Interestingly, the wide-angle camera performs better than some mid-range phones, which often just add cameras to their phones just so they can say they have multiple cameras, like the case of the Redmi Note 10, which, as you can see, the old but gold G6 still kicks its ass. But one bad thing I pointed out in my 2021 video was that the oleophobic or anti-reflective coating, or whatever that thing is, that when it's scratched results in a loss of quality. I made the mistake of removing it completely, which ruined the camera with blurry photos even though the lens itself didn't have any damage. Luckily, this is easy to solve, and it's as simple as getting some replacement that is very cheap to replace the old one. It'll make a huge difference. In low light conditions, it does struggle quite a bit, but it's still better than most low-end phones and some mid-rangers. But these are not photos to show off either. LG also gave us a manual mode so we can take photos of the night sky, for example. To record videos, LG gave us countless video options such as split screen recording to a manual mode. We can record up to 4K 30 and we have optical and digital stabilization, and the videos in good condition still look quite decent, but just like the photos at night, they don't look all that nice. So when it comes to performance for social media, these old phones still got it. WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok, Telegram all work here. Sure, it's not lag-free, but all of them run very well. But when I was on Android 8 and 9, the lag sometimes would get really out of control, and the phone would get really hot. For web browsing, I have the latest version of Chrome, and all I can say is the experience is good. But if you have many apps in the background or hundreds of tabs open like it's my case, yes, you'll find some lag depending on the website. Something that I noticed much more when I was on Android 8, and many times the lag would really get on my nerves when I was editing long videos. In this clip you can see what I'm talking about. 4K video playback on YouTube is smooth. I was on Android 9 when I made this clip, and as you can see the app works just fine. I also have to mention that we don't have stereo speakers, but the audio coming out of its single speaker is good. And remember, this phone still has a headphone jack and it has a pretty good DAC, which is better than most phones that still have a port that, by the way, also allows us to use the radio. Gaming wise, well, not much has changed since 2021. Casual games like Clash Royale or old heavy games like GTA San Andreas, the G6 runs them all perfectly with everything maxed out. But in the case of GTA San Andreas, we'll occasionally see glitches for some reason. Roblox is interesting since I couldn't open the game no matter how much I wanted to because of that bug that I mentioned at the beginning. But now it works great. I'm playing a map called Doors and it runs very well with the graphics set to max. But I guess if you play heavier maps, you'll have to lower the graphics even more. Call of Duty Mobile also runs great even on high settings, and sorry for the high ping, but just when I started making the video, everyone and their mother started using the internet. We'll also get the same good performance with other similar games like Free Fire Max or PUBG. However, if what you want to play is much more demanding games like Fortnite or Genshin Impact, you better find other fun if you want to play those games, since the performance will leave much to be desired. For emulation, it's the same as I said in 2021. All the consoles up to the PSP and Dreamcast run great. Even God of War Ghost of Sparta, which is the most demanding game for the PSP, runs great. But moving on to GameCube, some games will be playable, but others won't. For example, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is playable, but other games like the case of Zelda Wind Waker are just a tiny hair away of being playable. And finally, battery life does depend to a large extent on the brightness of the screen or the type of apps or games you're using. And we also have to take into account the age of the battery, that after 6 years it has worn out a lot since 2017. And in my case, I get around 4 hours of screen time, which is still acceptable for me. The problem is that if you're looking for this phone, you have no way of knowing if the battery has received a good beating, or if it was in a drawer for the last couple years. And despite the years, the G6 is still one of my favorite Android phones ever. I fell in love with those square edges and those silver frames, and that's why even today I still use it as my secondary phone. And to answer the question of whether or not it's still worth it, I would say it's generally not worth it anymore, at least as a main phone. Unless you can find it for less than $70 and you're looking for a compact device with a nice design, camera, and construction for social media only. In those aspects, it's still better than any device in this price range. And if that's your case, I would say it's still worth it today. But other than that, I would go for an LG V30, which is similarly priced but has aged much better than the G6. And well, with all of this said, I hope you like this video. Leave a like that doesn't cost you anything, and see you guys the next time. Bye.